That daily grind, right? Stuck in traffic. Again, the air feels, I don't know, thick.
Yeah, and trying to find just a patch of green can feel impossible sometimes.
It's that typical urban reality, and honestly, it just grinds you down after a while.
It really does. And it's not just one place, it's happening globally as more and more people move into cities.
The infrastructure just wasn't built for this many people, was it?
Often not, no. It puts this huge strain on everything.
And that leads us right into our deep dive today. Master planned cities. Could they actually be, this solution?
That's the big question we're looking at.
We're zooming in on Bonifacio Global City, BGC, in Metro Manila. It's a fascinating example because it was built totally from scratch.
Right, with specific goals in mind. Sustainability, smart tech, community. It wasn't accidental growth.
Unlike so many cities that just sort of grew organically, often chaotically.
Exactly. BGC was a deliberate attempt to fix the very problems you mentioned, the traffic, the pollution, the lack of planning.
So the real core question for us is, can places like BGC genuinely show us a new way forward for urban living?
Or are they maybe just, well, nice bubbles for a privileged few, not really solving the bigger picture?
Yeah, are they scalable? We've been digging into data on BGC, obviously, but also looking at places like Singapore
Which is often held up as the gold standard, the Garden City.
and really trying to weigh the pros and cons of this whole master planned approach.
Our mission here is to figure out if these cities offer a real, viable path to better, more sustainable urban life for more people.
And what that might mean for how all of us could be living down the line.
Exactly. What are the implications?
Okay, so let's set the stage first. Why the urgency? Why are we even looking for alternatives to our current cities? What's the real pressure point?
Well, it's the sheer pace of urbanization. The UN predicts that by 2050, almost 70% of everyone on Earth will live in a city.
70%? That's a lot.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And that concentration puts immense pressure on everything: housing, transport, water, air quality,
Yeah.
you name it.
Let's talk traffic, because that's something so many people feel viscerally. In Metro Manila, the data's just wild.
It is. Commuters there are losing, what was it, 257 hours a year just sitting in traffic.
That's more than 10 full days. Just gone. And it's not just the wasted time, is it?
No, not at all. Think about the lost productivity for businesses, the extra fuel burned, the constant stress.
Yeah, and the pollution from all those idling cars.
Precisely. Which ties into the wider air quality issue. The World Health Organization, the WHO, they estimate something like 90% of city dwellers globally are breathing unsafe air.
90%. That's staggering.
It is, and it's linked to around 7 million premature deaths every single year.
7 million.
Yeah. In places like Delhi or even parts of Manila, the dangerous particle levels, the PM 2.5, can be 5, even 10 times higher than WHO guidelines recommend.
That's a serious public health emergency.
Absolutely. And it tends to hit vulnerable groups the hardest.
And then there's the green space issue, or lack thereof. We know being near nature is good for us, right?
Definitely. There was a study, University of Aarhus, I think, showing clear links between green space and better mental and physical health.
But in Metro Manila, the average person has maybe 5 square meters of green space.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is miles off the WHO recommendation of 50 square meters per person.
50. Wow. So you really feel that disconnect living in a concrete jungle.
You do. And all these factors, the traffic, the pollution, the lack of nature, they add up. A Gallup poll in 2023 found nearly half of city dwellers in developing nations were just plain dissatisfied.
Stress, isolation, no real sense of community.
Exactly those things. And that's what's driving this search for different ways to build and live in cities.
Which brings us right back to master planned cities. Define that for us. What actually makes a city master planned?
The key difference is intention. These cities are designed, usually from the ground up, with a whole plan in mind from day one.
Not just letting things sprawl.
Right. The focus is usually on things like sustainability, making things efficient, and boosting people's well-being.
Okay, so what are the key ingredients you usually find in that mix?
Well, sustainability is huge. Think energy-efficient buildings, maybe incorporating renewable energy sources, good waste management system.
Lessening the environmental footprint.
Exactly. Green space is another big one. Parks, gardens, tree-lined streets planned in, not just leftover bits of land.
Right.
Then there's smart technology, using tech for things like managing traffic flow better with IoT systems, providing public Wi-Fi, that sort of thing.
Making the city run smoother.
Hopefully, yes. Mixed-use development is also key, putting homes, shops, offices, and leisure spaces close together.
The live work play idea, so you don't have to commute for miles.
Precisely. And that ties into pedestrian-friendly design. Wider sidewalks, bike lanes, making it easy and pleasant to walk around.
Okay, and BGC in Metro Manila seems to really tick a lot of those boxes, doesn't it? Give us the specifics on BGC.
Sure. So BGC, it's about 240 hectares in Taguig City,
Mm.
part of Metro Manila. And it's built on what used to be a military base, Fort Bonifacio.
A blank slate, essentially.
Pretty much. Developed mainly by Ayala Land, a major developer, in partnership with the government's Bases Conversion and Development Authority. The goal was a modern, world-class city center.
And you can see the planning in the layout, I hear. Wide sidewalks, lots of trees.
Absolutely. It feels quite different from older parts of Manila. They dedicated over 30% of the land to green and open spaces.
30%? That's significant. Like those parks, Track 30th and Terra 28.
Exactly. They're very popular. Plus, things like having the utilities power lines, pipes buried underground makes a big visual difference. Cleaner streets, less clutter.
And the grid layout, does that actually help with traffic inside BGC?
It's designed to, yes. It promotes a more logical traffic flow compared to, say, the winding, sometimes unpredictable streets elsewhere.
Mm.
And you see those mixed-use towers like one Bonifacio High Street.
Live, work, shop, all in one complex.
Right. Reduces the need for travel. Plus, there's a real push for green buildings. Lots of them have LED certification.
That's the energy efficiency standard.
Yeah. Leadership in energy and environmental design.
Yeah.
It means they're designed to use less energy, less water, and they have a central waste management system that reportedly recycles a good chunk of their waste, maybe around 60%.
Okay, impressive. What about this smart part of BGC? How does technology play into daily life there?
Well, they have a traffic management system. It uses cameras and sensors to monitor traffic in real time and adjust the signals.
Does it work?
A study back in 2022 suggested it cut travel times within BGC by about 15%. They also offer free public Wi-Fi in many areas.
That's handy.
And things like smart parking apps to help you find a spot. Digital payments are common. Plus, they have a central command center watching over security cameras and traffic feeds.
Sounds quite controlled, especially given the huge number of people there during the day.
Yeah, the daytime population swells massively. Apparently over 1 million people commute in for work or leisure.
So it's definitely a different vibe than the rest of Metro Manila. How does that translate into community feel and lifestyle?
Well, the public spaces are key. Places like the BGC Greenway Park are used for concerts, markets, community gatherings.
So it's not just glass towers.
No, there's an effort to create that public life. You've got big malls like SM Aura, Market, but also cultural spots like the Art Center and the Mind Museum. And crucially, it's designed to be walkable.
Walkable how?
A survey just this year suggested something like 80% of amenities, shops, restaurants, parks are within a 10-minute walk for most residents.
That's a huge plus. Less need for a car for everyday errands?
Definitely encourages people to get out and walk.
Okay, so the design sounds great on paper, but does it actually make life better for the people living there? Is there proof?
There is some data. A University of the Philippines survey from 2023 found BGC residents reported significantly higher life satisfaction, 78% higher, I think it was, compared to other Metro Manila residents.
Why? What did they point to?
Things like much shorter commutes. Average inside BGC was maybe 15 minutes versus 45 minutes citywide.
Yeah.
Access to parks was another big one.
And air quality.
Yeah, they even reported better air quality, with PM 2.5 levels about 20% lower than central Manila, according to the survey. And maybe a stronger sense of community, too.
Interesting. About 65% felt connected versus 40% elsewhere.
Something like that, yeah. So definite perceived benefits.
But is BGC just a one-off, a special case, or are there other cities doing this successfully? You mentioned Singapore earlier.
Ah, yes, Singapore. It's really the poster child for this kind of long-term integrated urban planning. They call it the Garden City vision.
And that started way back, didn't it?
Yeah, back in the 1960s, it was a deliberate government-led initiative to transform Singapore into this incredibly green and livable city-state, even as it became densely populated.
And the results are kind of undeniable. What's the green cover there now?
Something like 47%, which is amazing for a major city. They have hundreds of parks. They integrate greenery onto buildings, rooftop gardens.
Those super trees?
Exactly, like at Gardens by the Bay. And it's not just green space. Their public transport system is world-class.
Right. Most people use public transport.
The Land Transport Authority says it serves about 90% of journeys, keeping car dependency much lower than many cities, maybe only 30%, plus strict energy standards for buildings, a big push towards zero waste.
Aiming for 70% recycling, I read.
And their whole Smart Nation initiative uses tech everywhere to improve city services and quality of life.
And it shows in the rankings, right? High life expectancy, top livability scores.
Consistently. Singapore often tops the Mercer Quality of Living Index. Think clean air PM 2.5 levels around 12 micrograms per cubic meter, which is quite low crime. Great community spaces like East Coast Park, well-designed public housing estates like Punggol.
It really seems like a holistic approach.
It is, very much so.
So what are the big takeaways from Singapore that a place like BGC could maybe learn from or adapt?
Well, one key difference is the planning horizon. Singapore thinks in terms of 50-year plans, maybe even longer. BGC's vision seems a bit shorter term, perhaps more like 20 years.
That long-term view makes a difference.
It allows for more strategic infrastructure investment. Another point is the leadership model. Singapore was very much government-driven. BGC is mostly private sector-led.
Which has different implications.
Yeah, maybe opportunities for more public-private partnerships in BGC. But the biggest difference, arguably, is accessibility.
Ah, the housing issue.
Right. Singapore has its Housing and Development Board, the HDB flats, which house around 80% of the population. It ensures a mix of incomes can live across the city.
Whereas BGC
Is much more focused on the high-end market. It caters mainly to affluent residents and workers. That's a fundamental difference in social outcome.
Okay, let's broaden out them. Looking at BGC in Singapore, what are the general plus points, the big benefits these master plan cities seem to offer?
Well, we've touched on them, but let's summarize. Sustainability is a big one, better resource management, potential for lower emissions.
Reduced congestion is another huge appeal.
Definitely. Through better design, more walkability, good transit, leads to time savings, less stress.
Enhanced quality of life seems to be a consistent theme.
Yeah, the access to green space, amenities, potentially stronger communities. And finally, they can be hubs for innovation and more resilient.
How so on the resilience front?
Well, the smart tech can help manage resources better during shocks. And the infrastructure itself can be designed with things like climate change and mine flood defenses, earthquake proofing.
Let's dig into sustainability a bit more. BGC's LED buildings reportedly cut energy use by 30%.
That's the kind of figure cited, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just one aspect. Imagine integrating more solar power, more efficient water systems, and pushing those recycling rates even higher, like Singapore's waste-to-energy plants.
It aligns with global goals, like the UN's Sustainable Development Goal 11 for cities.
Absolutely. It's about making urban living less resource-intensive.
And the reduced congestion, BGC's walkability, cutting car trips by 25%. That sounds good.
It does. And compare that to Singapore's MRT system moving over 3 million people daily. When you reduce car dependency, you get time back, the air gets cleaner, people are maybe a bit healthier from walking more.
It's a virtuous cycle.
Potentially, yes.
And the quality of life you mentioned, a Harvard study linking green space to lower depression rates.
Yeah, something like a 15% lower risk.
Yep.
So having parks like in BGC or Singapore's gardens readily available really matters. And mixed-use areas like BGC's High Street getting thousands of visitors foster that interaction.
And access to everything close by.
Makes a big difference to daily life.
Okay, but it can't all be rosy. Let's flip the coin. What are the big downsides, the criticisms of these master plan cities?
There are definitely significant challenges. The cost and who gets to live there is probably number one.
Accessibility.
Then issues around social equity and inclusion. Do they divide cities more? Also, the potential loss of culture or history. And finally, can you actually replicate this model easily elsewhere? Scalability.
Right, let's tackle cost first. Building BGC wasn't cheap, something like $5 billion.
By 2023 estimates, yeah. It's a massive investment, and that translates directly into property prices.
How much higher are we talking?
Reports suggest prices per square meter in BGC are maybe 5 times the average in Manila, around $3,000 per square meter.
Wow. Okay, so that immediately prices out a huge majority of the population.
Absolutely. And while there might be some efforts towards affordable housing, reports suggest it's a small fraction, maybe only 10% in BGC.
Which contrasts sharply with Singapore's 80% in public housing.
Exactly. It raises real questions about elitism and creating exclusive bubbles.
And that feeds directly into the social equity concerns, doesn't it? If only the rich can afford these nice, planned environments.
Does it just make the divides in society even wider? It's a major criticism. We mentioned that study showing most BGC workers commute from outside.
The Ateneo de Manila study, yeah, 60% commuting in.
So you have this shiny, efficient city center, but the people who clean the offices or serve the coffee often can't afford to live there. There's a disconnect.
Is this unique to BGC or a common issue with private-led planned cities?
It's a very common challenge, especially in developing economies where the wealth gap is already large. Scaling up Singapore's inclusive model requires immense political will and resources that aren't always available.
What about the cultural angle? Do these planned cities sometimes feel a bit sterile, lacking soul?
That criticism does come up. Sometimes they're accused of erasing existing heritage, although BGC largely avoided that since it was built on a military base.
Not displacing old neighborhoods.
Right. But cities like Brasilia, for example, have faced criticism for feeling overly planned, maybe lacking that organic charm that grows over time. BGC's aesthetic is quite modern, corporate, some might say.
Compared to the historical vibe of Intramuros in Manila, perhaps.
Exactly. It's a different feel. Whether one is better is subjective, but the lack of historical layers can feel like a loss to some.
And then scalability. Can we really build enough BGCs or Singapores to fix the problems of massive cities like Metro Manila, let alone globally?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? It's incredibly resource-intensive. You need land, huge amounts of capital, political alignment.
Things that are often in short supply.
Precisely. And BGC, for all its success, is still relatively small, maybe 250,000 residents and workers, compared to 13 million in Metro Manila.
A drop in the bucket, really.
In terms of population scale,
Yeah.
yes. Singapore had the advantage of being a city-state with centralized control. Replicating that is tough. A World Bank report noted many planned cities just end up as isolated enclaves.
So they don't fundamentally change the whole urban system around them?
Not always, no.
Okay, so let's draw a direct comparison then. BGC versus, say, older, more established parts of Metro Manila like Quezon City or Makati. How do they stack up on key issues?
Well, take congestion. Quezon City commuters might lose 240 hours a year to traffic, according to TomTom. BGC residents maybe only 90 hours within BGC itself.
That's a huge difference, like 60% better.
Within BGC, yes. But BGC's existence doesn't magically fix the traffic jams on the main highways connecting everything else. Its impact on regional congestion is limited.
What about environmental impact? Air quality?
Again, locally, BGC performs better, maybe PM 2.5 levels around 10 micrograms per cubic meter compared to 30 or more in other parts of Manila.
So healthier air if you live or work there.
Definitely. But it's a localized benefit. It doesn't solve the citywide air pollution problem. Compare that to Singapore's citywide policies like congestion pricing, which aim for broader impact.
And livability, community feel. How does BGC compare to somewhere like Makati?
It's different. Makati has its own central business district, but it feels more integrated with the surrounding city, perhaps more culturally diverse, more Manila in feel.
Or organic, maybe?
Possibly. But it also has much less green space per person, maybe 3 square meters versus BGC's 20, and faces more severe congestion in many areas. BGC offers a more cohesive, planned environment, but feels more upscale and perhaps less representative of the broader city population than Makati.
So there are definite trade-offs.
Absolutely. Neither is perfect. They offer different sets of advantages and disadvantages.
So, reflecting on all this, where does BGC stand as a potential leader for future urban living? It sounds like a mix of real wins and significant limitations.
I think that's fair. BGC is a powerful proof of concept within its boundaries. It shows that applying these planning principles can lead to better outcomes, higher resident satisfaction, lower local carbon footprint.
The 78% satisfaction rate and 30% lower carbon footprint figures are compelling.
They are. And Singapore's success at a national scale, with its high transit use and top livability, shows the potential when these ideas are implemented comprehensively and inclusively.
But BGC's exclusivity and limited scale are major caveats. What needs to happen for this model, or lessons from it, to have a broader impact?
Well, enhancing accessibility is critical. Finding ways, perhaps through those public-private partnerships, to build more affordable housing within or near these developments is key.
Like Singapore's HDB model, but adapted.
Exactly. Scaling the solutions is also vital. These planned areas need better integration with the wider region, especially through public transport links. You can't just have isolated islands of efficiency. Preserving or incorporating local culture is important so these places don't feel generic. And continued investment in resilience designing for climate change, for example, is non-negotiable.
It's interesting that some forecasts, like from UN Habitat, predict a growing chunk of new urban development, maybe 20% by 2050, will be master planned.
It shows there's a perceived need and potential. The pressures driving this population growth, climate change, demand for better living standards, aren't going away. So learning from BGC, Singapore, and others, both what they did right and wrong, is crucial for shaping those future developments.
So let's leap back to our big question. Can BGC truly redefine the future of urban living? What's the final verdict?
I think the verdict is nuanced. BGC is a successful example of high-quality urban development in a specific context. It demonstrates what's possible.
But it's not the universal solution as it stands now.
Probably not. Its real value might be less as a directly replicable template and more as an inspiration. It shows that intentional design focused on sustainability, walkability, and community can create much better urban environments.
So the goal isn't necessarily to build hundreds more BGCs exactly like it everywhere.
Perhaps not. Maybe it's more about taking the principles, the focus on green space, mixed use, transit integration, smart resource management, and finding ways to apply them more broadly, even within existing cities.
So the future isn't just planned cities versus traditional cities, but maybe a blend, infusing planned sustainability into the fabric of our existing urban ecosystems.
That seems like a more realistic and potentially more equitable path forward. Leveraging the best of both worlds, the efficiency and foresight of planning with the inclusivity and organic character of established communities.
So for you listening, what do you think? Is the BGC model, despite its costs and exclusivity, a glimpse of a better urban future? Or are the challenges just too big for it to be more than a niche solution?
It's definitely something to mull over. How do we balance the desire for well-designed, sustainable spaces with the need for accessibility and social equity?
It's clear there's no single magic bullet. The journey towards creating cities that are truly livable, sustainable, and fair for everyone is complex, and it's definitely ongoing.